All right, let's jump into it. So yeah, a little bit earlier on the screen this morning, about quarter to 10. So it's just that little quiet patch just before things sort of start to kick off, get a bit of volume in and that. So it gives it a chance to sort of think about overnight action a little bit. Um, so start off with DXY because this is obviously, in my opinion, the main driver of absolutely everything at the moment. Obviously, this whole year has just been grind, level up, grind. And I mean, it's only just the start of Feb, so that's as far as we've gone. But really, it's just at this point. But main thing I want to sort of talk about is just this point here last night. It took it right to the brink. I mean, this level here, this little thinner zone that I've got identified here, this goes way back to this body fill. It was actually just a small little zone that we had sort of previously. So it's not even like a sort of major zone, but the market said, hey, look, you know what? This is where we're going to sort of hit the brakes. And as you can see, we've had two attempts. And if you've been watching what I've been saying the last week or however long it's been through this point, these are my two trigger points to sort of say if we can get past here, to me that's okay. Confirmation, yes, we're going for the next leg. Likewise for the downside here. Excuse me, yes, we're going for the next leg. Early indicator for at least the downside because there's a little bit more room or gap between this area is a close down in this zone over here to obviously test that one. And you can see this top side over here as well. Apart from this one, which was the first attempt to sort of drive it up, which obviously got smacked back down, it has not been able to close past this section. As you can see up here, two attempts with the wicks to sort of get to the top side there, and bang, smack down. And the main thing that I'm sort of taking away from this is that sort of like, the last couple of weeks, US has had pretty strong data. Like, this is half the argument of, do they need rate cuts now? Is it too early? Yada, yada. There's so many moving parts with these sort of things. And, one of the main things I think is obviously the CPI, the fact that, it's actually sort of, they've had a slight uptick in their inflation. So it wouldn't make sense to to cut the rates. Now, you cut the rates sort of like when you want to sort of avoid the recession, you want to stimulate the economy and that. You don't want to, but the juggling act with that is that you don't want to cut it too early and then just find inflation kicks back on. And likewise with the other side, like, you want to sort of you want to raise rates when you want to bring the inflation down, you want to curb the spending, these kind of things, but you don't want to push that too hard because then you got the recession. And that's the balancing act on the other side. So it's always, it's not just a clear cut, oh, this is happening, so the reaction is going to be this. It's so many moving parts in there that sort of like really need to be sort of weighed up. But right now, the talk is about cuts. And, they've got the inflation going up. Well, up, sort of, it ticked up kind of thing. It's stalled, basically. It's a one or two sort of pips either way. Um, but with that sort of like, sorry, brother. So, yeah, with that, you've got an argument for sort of like, well, there's no point cutting rates now. It'll add to inflation. It'll just exacerbate the problem. Okay, that's fine. And that was pretty much sort of what Powell was saying the other night or the other morning with the FOMC that they don't believe they'll be at the right sort of position um, come sort of March to cut rates. Okay, that's fine. We saw the market reaction. Sort of knocked back down even through yesterday. It drove right up, so I was trying to work off on the back of that sort of those comments as well. Um, but even though you've got that, it was unable to break out. On top of that, we had more data out last night. We had ISM, which was probably the bigger one of the two. We had also unemployment claims. So unemployment claims ticking up. So that's obviously sort of probably more in the camp of, yeah, okay, you need to sort of stimulate the economy because, they don't want the unemployment numbers to get too high. So that's one tick for, I would say rate cuts, but in that direction, opposed to sort of moving the other way. And that had a sort of somewhat effect on the market. Nothing sort of super drastic, but the big one that sort of came was where are we? The ISM data. This is very strong. I mean, well, very strong. I mean, above 50 is expansion. They were tipping 46 for the manufacturing prices. It took me 47.2, so actually taking a little bit of a slowdown. Not only did they not get a slowdown, they actually sort of moved up. So, you would think that this would be a very good argument for sort of like, well, everything in the economy is quite strong, it's moving in the right direction. So we've got these sort of we've got no reason to sort of like, cut the rates in that because, if it's moving in the right direction, we don't need to help push it along by stimulating it by sort of cutting the rates. So this is very much sort of dollar bull kind of like report of figures of data. And as you can see here, where have we got the final manufacturing 50.7. So that also beat. So construction spending, that sort of held. Where was it revised from? So I didn't actually see these other bits of data sort of come through. Revised from '04, that's ticked up. So this is all very sort of dollar bullish sort of data that came out. And as we saw a second ago, it was right up at the brink. Like it's on the point of, okay, look, you've got rate cuts off the table. You've got strong economic data, which also, as I said, sort of like means that, they don't need to help push it along and stimulate the economy. And the market's still sold into it and sold into it very hard. If you look at this, I'll pull this on the 4 hour, but if we see this sort of sell-off coming through here, 2 o'clock, this was the ISM data that came out, and you can see this sort of like this was its chance to sort of spike and move back up. Like it was moving down a little bit here. We had, if you zoom in on this, we actually had little lower highs coming through here, and depending on how lower time frame you want to sort of get into, you can see these sort of like, as it came down here, lower high, and look at this, it just was not getting any sort of buying power to sort of justify any kind of little move back up here. It was just a little dribble, dribble, dribble. We are seeing quite a big push up as it sort of came down to this bottom area here. So I wouldn't be surprised if this sees some sort of rally effort at least. I don't think we're going to go through here, certainly with NFP tonight. I don't think anything's going to be happening sort of prior to it all, but you can't ignore this sort of move down here. If we get back on the 1 hour, you can sort of, I'll do it on a half hour. You can see as this data dropped here, market said, well, as I just said a moment ago, this is very dollar bullish kind of data. You know what I mean? Strong economy, well, it doesn't need a helping hand. So, we're going to sort of hold the rates for longer, higher for longer, that kind of sort of rhetoric with it all. But what did the market do? They just you said, oh, beautiful. I was about to sort of sell it here. Now I can sell it here. Give it to me. Bang. And they slammed it. And not just there, they continued to push it all the way down to the bottom. That's very telling. To me, it's sort of like companies that come out with sort of like really strong sort of financial data or sort of like, strong reports, good earnings. And, seemingly, people should be happy and they sort of should be buying the stock. But the people that are actually sort of controlling things and moving things have actually got the weight. They're just like, bang, I'm just going to sell into that. And bang, that's what happened here. And this is a bit more going back, like going way back, actually, way back up here. I'd have to look at what data it was around that time, but when we were back up around here, this 106, before we saw the sort of larger sort of sell-off, the same thing was happening over here, and they were getting strong data, and it was being sold into. I remember at the time, I'd have to go back. I'm sure I've got it on a couple of the streams or the videos. So I'll have a quick look into actually what it was for tomorrow. But certainly the same thing was happening up around here, and we can look at the resulting action as it came down here. So you've got to look at sort of DXY. When things turn around, they don't turn around on a dime. They go up here, they suck out, suck out, suck out, suck out, suck out. Even this last move up here. I mean, how many people were sort of like going, oh, yep, cool, I'll be short, I'll be short, I'll be short. I always remember getting burnt out. And then obviously here, suck in a whole bunch of longs and rip it, bang, down to the downside here. So at the moment, look, you got to get down under, as I said, under 207, sorry, 207, sort of 102.70 for downside confirmation for me. But again, look, it's not there yet. So as strong as it is coming down here, look at these reactions as a push back up here as well. Or maybe not, this one's a bit more of a dribble, but certainly this reaction here and this reaction here, very strong sort of pushes to the top side here. This time, I don't know, we're on 4 hour, we're tipping over with the RSI. If this breaks down early, if we sort of see this sort of drop off early in Asia, I'd look for this wick fill. I expect a reaction from here. If we break this wick, I expect to push down to test this 207 area, and I expect to push back up here. You've got NFP tonight, and NFP typically is one of these things that sets the trend for the rest of the month. So, you know what I mean? Like, it hasn't, NFP's funny because sometimes it has a large effect, sometimes it just has a sort of nullified nothing effect in that. But I think right now, it seems to be the bit of data, and this has been such a big week of data coming out, and it just hasn't been enough for DXY to break either way, really. But, you know, a lot of people, it's coming into this whole sort of congestion period or consolidation period here in a bullish momentum. It favors the bulls for a continuation. And they certainly, they've had the data, they've been on the brink, right to push it, and they're just not there. The buyers are just not there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm dollar bearish. I still think that we'll have a sort of bit of a pushback down over here, but end of the day, you got to sort of take what it is. And I put on X last night that if we took out these wicks here, like I even sort of put it like with those arrows there, and I said, look, here's the three highs. If we take this out, to me, that's confirmation. We move up, we come up here into these sort of higher levels over here, and we see potentially just another leg up, and that would give us a bit of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of fifth leg up to the top side here. The fact that it got smacked into and so hard, to me, is something that's quite telling with it all. And we saw sort of other things like gold ripped right through as well. Equity markets punched up. I don't really go through equity markets here, but if we look at the Nasdaq right off the 38, right off the 38% fib, and that just hammered back up last night. Have a look at you know, S&P, like that's coming up, and that's new highs here. These kind of moves can very much be sort of like everybody that was short thought they were the god. Hey, I shorted the top. Well, now you stopped out, unless you've still got your wide stop up over here in no man's land. But you know, if you're doing it on a technical level, this is a nice level that people could come up, stop, and then roll it back down here, and that could go in line with the fact that DXY didn't actually close out the bottom side of that range. So if it were to sort of come back down, that could obviously spark DXY back up, and along with the grind, along with the range. But anyway, back onto what we actually trade and what we actually do. This is gold. Actually, sorry, just before I do it, so DXY, a couple of things here. One, if we break these wicks down here and we see a continuation, got RSI supporting it, this is the plan of action for me. Come down here, test 207, expect a reaction here, and then a push back up. If it fails to do this, then, you know, we're probably sort of looking like a bit of a move. So get down onto maybe a bit of a lower time frame. So we can see little ranges through this area here. This is, again, these sort of ones, they're not real ranges. They're just areas that have sort of been repeated time and time again. So, you know, I think for me, that's where you need to get above. So if we see a move here, you go add alert, and I'd say this is a recovery effort. Recovery effort. If we get back above this, I mean, look, RSI is right down the bottom here, ready to tip. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of a push up here. If we go past that, then retest the underside of this sort of potential range here. So a little smaller sort of one, and we say, you know, flip him back over here. Something similar to this. So they're the two levels that I'm looking for top side moves. So we get past this little bit here, then I think we go up to the top up here, and then we see a little bit of a move up like this, and then back down there. I don't think, I mean, look, if you saw how fast these things ripped from both sides, it's not a tell. It's not guaranteed either way, because, you know, there's a very strong buying action here, and it should have gone. This is the thing. This move here was a justified move. This was coming off sort of like, you know, around Powell's comments and everything. So that was a justified move here. This should have also gone up. I don't know. There's something in that, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, I don't think we're going to get any major breaks prior to NFP. But they're the two little actions that I'm looking. I'm looking for a bit more, probably a pretty quiet day for DXY. Usually they're the ones that it'll just absolutely tear off and that. But you know, that's my feeling at the moment. It's going to be quite subdued before these larger news events. All right, on to gold. Gold hammered here, and gold, you know, as I've said, if you've been watching me, sort of like I'm very much in the sort of the gold bull camp and that. So this really took off last night, and after a little bit of a sort of kind of, I guess you call it a fake breakdown, because 4 hour tells the story better. So we've seen this area here. We've said 30s are the level, right? 40s the level above that, because 40s were really the trigger point to go flying through to the top and smack back down here again. A little bit of a stuff around this time. Didn't quite sort of get this continued grind the whole way. But we said, look, this angle here doesn't necessarily mean we're dead. It just sort of means that, you know, it might take a little bit. Came back down here. And for me, the tell here is the fact that we went down here, we tested an area, as you can see, you know, we know buys sit in this zone. Can make this one green actually. So let's make you a support, because we know buyers are sitting here. I'm not going to call this buzz yet because, you know, it is important, but obviously they allow it to slip through here. I want to see sort of solid areas. See, these are solid, solid, solid. This one's solid, solid. This is to me a little bit of more of a swing point kind of thing. But in this instance here, what we're looking for is the fact that even though it went down, where did it close? It managed to close in this top area. And if you watch what I was saying yesterday, I said, look, you know, the fact that we've broken through here and we closed up the top here, this is the area that we want to bat. This is the area, this is the battleground through here. Yes, it came down here, obviously stopped out a bunch of people, dragged in. Look, this is a typical gold move. If you do this, look at that. Where that wick is there, down the bottom, boom. No, you can't even see it with that one. Let's make it whatever. Make it that color, the purple. Boom. If people sort of are long, and this is what gold does before it does a move, it comes down here, okay, bang, people sort of, they're sort of long, they're long, they're long, wow, I survived this sort of push down. They've put their stops right underneath that wick, because technically then, you know, if we get that, we're getting a lower low and we're rolling over and we're coming down. What does it do? Comes right down here, takes out all those technical stops. This is why I always say with gold, you got to have a little bit of leeway with your stops. If it means the position size is a little bit smaller, or you just want to have a little bit extra risk on it, well, give it a little bit of leeway, because it's not a big move down. It's only like $2 move or so. But obviously it came back down here, took out any sort of those technical stops, and then fired back up. But that's just how gold moves. It's a very, like, it knows where the sort of technical stops are. But for me, the tell is this bit here. Because like I said on the other videos, it's sort of like, you know, we had this sort of sell down here, came back up, managed to close up above the sort of support area, or in the support area, and fired along and went along its way. And same sort of thing here. We closed up here, fired up, came down. Closed up here, fired up, came up. So this is the area between sort of, you know, 19 sort of, you know, call it 1940 just as a round number, but, you know, maybe high 30s and 55. So the reverse is almost similar, exactly the same here as well. So we can say that sort of like, you know, and again, it's always good to go, like sort of when you're watching footy or something like this, go back and sort of review the games. The reason we put this arrow here is because we said, look, you know, even though we came up here and we sold back down, we come up here, sellers are going to be here again. And this is the same, means the same as this does, just in reverse. The fact that it went up here, took out all these sort of stops, like anybody, and I said this move would be undone. It did get undone. Came up here, pushed even harder, up to 65 last night, but unable to close out the top. So that's exactly the same as this in reverse. These are our areas that we're sort of saying that the sellers are sitting, the buyers are sitting. We can get rid of this now because that doesn't really count as anything. The fact that it was unable to close out the top, and you can see with the second attempt, failed here, bang. So I would say short term, potentially we see a little bit of a sort of pushback and a drift around with this as well, because you want to see a close, a solid candle out the top over here. You want to see, if we do this, Still got this one set up. Maybe I don't. Anyway, that's the kind of candle you want to see. You want to see something that's solid, closes out the top, and that sort of tells us that the sellers that are sitting in this zone, that we know are sitting in this zone, that's one of the resistance. The sellers that we know are sitting in the zone are depleted. When you can get a close here, higher the better. You get a close like this, well, then you know that you're definitely moving up sort of through it all. But the fact that it got smacked back down here, second attempt, got smacked back down here, means that obviously the market and whoever's selling it are still there. They're still sitting in a spit. Nothing guarantees anything. Like, it doesn't mean that just because of that, okay, it's not going to go through. It just means that obviously there's a little bit more sort of trouble to sort of to deal with. A little bit more on the sellers to deal with. Once we go through this 55, well, then we look up and we say, okay, where were the other sellers? We've got little zones through here. I mean, you can see actually here right now, even if you isolate this, you see this little wick high that we had sort of back on this way down. What the hell's going on here? There we go. This one here. Again, this is more... Oh, jeez. This is amateur out here. Stone page. Back. Gold. Yeah. This little area here. We can see that this was obviously a point of reference on the way down. Almost looks like it was a little bit of a lower zone, like it was respected for the buyers and the sellers, and even a little bit more through here. And we can say that, okay, look, this has been... I didn't pick this up, I'm just literally sort of eyeing this now. But, you know what I mean? It's not a major zone. This is what I'm saying. This isn't an area where it's sort of been like, it's not sort of like a resistance that's, really sort of was a turning point. This one here, you could see it was a triangle, tried a second time and bang, got smashed down from it all. This is more just sort of like, okay, on the way up, sellers were selling it down, went through, buyers were holding it, came back down, buyers had another shot, sellers let it through, blah, blah, blah. Obviously on this big wick here, sort of coming back down, that's how they sort of knocked it down. But if you drag this through, and then all of a sudden we're getting an idea of why we saw that as the high moving through there. So I don't think this is really going to pose a great deal of problem. It was like the zone I had down here that I deleted just a moment ago. It played its part at one point, but it doesn't last forever, and it's not a major area. It's just more just a swing point of the price. So really sort of what we want to see is a sort of a solid close above, call it sort of 59.60. Above, I'd say this little middle wick here. So if we go to close on a 4 hour, above, say, call it 60, because that's a nice solid thing. That gives us a nice solid candle close out to the top side. If we see that then I'd imagine, obviously, wick fill, but then move up, and 75 will be the target. So where we go? Next little path going up here, something like this. We've already had the push back here. So that push here came back down. These are the previous highs. So previous highs become support. Well, almost support. It's not quite there yet. But that's what we're looking for. This area to really sort of swap over from being a resistance to being a support area. So you've had your push up, come back down. So I would say sort of if we can go through this wick, then we're going up towards 75. That's my sort of little tip. I think we've still got some upside to go on this, particularly everything's going to run in line with what happens with DXY. DXY is the main driver of absolutely everything at the moment. Equity markets, sort of, gold market, all these kind of things. If we see DXY break down, we're going to see big gains on gold. We're going to see equities continue to rip, which they're already doing. And we're going to see the crosses. So like Euro, we're going to see some sort of recovery in Aussie. Aussie sort of, God, I may as well jump onto Aussie now. What an absolute shamble. Jeez, look at this. Really sort of came down. I mean, look, it fired back up, and it's actually sort of having a little bit of a positive start to it all. It's taking out that previous 4 hour wick. So we could see it move up here. So this whole thing with Aussie here could potentially, this was the short that was definitely there through this zone. This could potentially be turning into a double bottom. So that's one thing to look for. It's not confirmed. It's way from being confirmed. But we could be seeing this double bottom through here. So still respecting the outside of this sort of falling channel. Actually, I think I redrew this channel, perhaps. I think I took it a little bit wider. No, that's still it. So, yeah, a couple of things with Aussie. So, let's get rid of this one here. Oh, not that, sorry. Get rid of this. And get rid of this one. Cool. So, where Aussie sort of it's bounced from last night. So, if we drag this up over here, a great sort of 61 fib. If we take it from the bottom over here, we put it right up to the top over here. We came in within a whisker of the 61% down here. So it's obviously had a very strong reaction, obviously sort of going in line with people selling US dollar. Like nobody's buying Aussie because they think Aussie is doing anything good, which seems to be the theme of its life. It's the only time it runs is when people don't want US dollars. But yeah, certainly, look, we are looking potentially for a double bottom. This is very much how a big bottom should be forming as well. The fact that sort of like, it's tried to break through, as I said, it failed breakout, okay, it comes down. It stopped out anybody that was long through this period that sort of, had their sort of stops at a technical level, even not even at a if they got long from the bottom here, even if they got long here and they put their stops underneath these lows, bang, you've been taken out and it's ripped back up here. So still breakout line is that sort of that high, that sort of 66.20 that we've been dealing with for the last week or so. Is the area that you need to sort of get. Is the area Aussie needs to get through if it's going to do anything. Till then, it's still in backtest territory because this was obviously a little bit of a range through here, and till it sort of really sort of pops back up above this and negates this, then that's the case of it. You know what I mean? It could just sort of be this and then roll over, and this could be backtest and come back down over here. Confirmation of the death of the Aussie is below 65 now, in my opinion. If you can't sort of hold this kind of reaction and get a continuation, well, you're going a lot further. So we'll have to sort of see how it plays out here. It's obviously having a little bit of a push just to sort of start off the session. Short term, I think 80 was a bit of a level that we had yesterday. As you can see, this is where the sellers were sitting. So I was going through this vid. So this was the sort of little move that we were looking for yesterday to get above 80. Obviously didn't get it, broke the bottom here. So we saw the sellers just disappear. Buyers disappear and whack right down the bottom here, testing that sort of low 65s. But here we are, we're back up here again. It's pushing into it early. So we'll see how we go with it all. But certainly I think sort of, round number 66 first, but ultimately 66.20 is your level to beat for the Aussie. And if we see US dollar selling off, that's going to be the catalyst for it. But, as I said, Aussie's just trading like absolute garbage. So, you can't really sort of put too much faith in it because, it can look like it's doing something pretty decent. I mean, look at this reaction here. Pulled back, second one, took out the highs, and then smacked. So, till you sort of get up above sort of 60, let's call it realistically 66.50 because that's going to be a heavy resistance area. You can't really sort of bank too much on the Aussie. But you got to take note of the reaction. If this does turn out to be a double bottom, well, then we can start to look at sort of where the measured move would be. And we sort of drag it from this, we drag it down to the bottom, even though these, technically they're different bottoms. This will give us a sort of rough idea. So, somewhat in between the two. That puts you back up over 67, back up into this big sort of grind range up here. So that's just one outcome, you know what I mean? Say you do actually get through the top side over here. Say we see the US dollar roll over and sort of sell down. That's where potentially you could be seeing some little sort of price target if this is a double bottom and that's your sort of that's your technical move to the top side. But again, that's getting way ahead of ourselves at the moment. Get through this little zone here at 80. Then we can sort of talk about something. It's looking pretty overboard anyway. This is on the 1 hour. 4 hours not looking too bad. But again, you want to see this sort of continuation. The fact that this is hard because, this is the end of US and it's obviously the volume dries up. But you don't want to see little moves like this. This is very much sort of like small, 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 bang. You take out probably this level here. So I would sort of put that realistically there. So if we go under, say, 60 again, 65, 60, I think there's a chance we sort of see a deeper pullback into like potentially at least the 40s of the 65 area there. Another one, copper next that really sort of failed a little bit here. We were saying yesterday, want to hold this line. Obviously, we broke through and bang. And hard to sort of say because we've done the technical sell down. You know, this is from the heavy horizontal and also the underside of this sort of rising support or previous rising support. And even with that US dollar sell-off, copper didn't do squat. Look at this. I mean, it made an attempt at one stage. What was this? But this is earlier in the night. This was like, excuse me, 10 o'clock local time. So actually, 10 to that's 10 to 2. So this was around um, what was it? The unemployment data that probably got that little push up there. So you know, even with this, unable to hold it. So for me, for now, still looking at this horizontal here. I was saying, look, you want to end the week above 395. That's looking like a pretty big stretch now. But, yeah, we'll see how it goes tonight. And if it does react with NFP, we can see it's decoupled a little bit from that sort of DXY movement because as DXY sort of sold right off, you should have seen this push back up. But, you know, they're obviously still a little bit hesitant about that. So I think you really want to hold this 385 level. If you break down through this, then I think the next line is going to be your 380 even down here. So this area would be your sort of little supports. I can actually make these green now, I suppose. Yeah, so I think that's really where your battleground now lies in between 395 and 385, call it that kind of area. Um, if you can get a big push back up here and close that week strong, well, as I said, with the sort of weekly chart, we could see that as a very, very bullish thing for copper moving forward. But at the moment, it's certainly looking like it's dragging, and this is just yet another thing that sort of weighs on any sort of potential gains with Aussie as well. And finish off with China, because China poked its head out, it really tried, it gave itself a little effort. And this is another thing, you know, I mean, it was right there. This is its breakout line. This is heavy resistance. We know the sellers are sitting here, and it got there, just couldn't hold it. It just can't find a reason to continue buying it and pushing it up higher there. And with this as well, it's actually sort of that effort has shown their hand a little bit for a bit of a negative divergence. So if we go through here, only slight. They don't need to be massive ones, but certainly it came back up here. And it's only a small little thing, but that is a negative divergence up to the top, and bang, it sold down. This is on a 4 hour as well, so you know, higher the time frame, the better. But certainly that is showing that there is quite some heavy, strong sort of selling happening around this area here. Again, this is the bottom line confirmation to sort of come back down to the lower levels. We've tested it once or twice, but and that's your short-term confirmation to sort of come back down. And again, this will sort of happen, if it does happen now, it'll happen sort of through DXY, through DXY, well, basically through DXY movement, but yes, US dollar sort of selling, but this will happen sort of through NFP tonight. All right, that's about it from me.